And now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Birutė Burauskaitė, Director of Genocide and Resistance Center of the Republic of Lithuania, who has devoted her whole life to the issues of historical justice. In Soviet times, she was actively involved in dissident movement. Before reestablishment of Lithuania's independence, she was a member of the commission that was registering both the victims and the facts. So the list that we have collected up to date include a big contribution of Birutė. Thank you very much. The 20th century brought huge losses and sufferings to European residents. The First World War used to be called the Great War because the loss of 12 million soldiers and over 30 million wounded soldiers was considered a very big tragedy that was never supposed to repeat itself. However, soon after that, in Germany, Italy, and the eastern part of Europe, Russia, totalitarian regimes started to be formed. These regimes differed greatly from other forms of violence, tyranny, dictatorship, as they were seeking to and eliminated the dividing line between the legitimate and non-legitimate authorities and government, based its ideology on as if objective laws allowing the state to expand its space at the expense of other countries and to export socialist revolution to them. However, the main feature of this regime was a total denial of persons' value and subjugation to collective purposes. The doctrines rejecting persons who were as if unworthy to exist, who did not comply with racist and classical criteria as it was in Germany and in Russia, was formed. Crowds emerged blindly obeying and worshipping their leaders, who were implementing the doctrines by using violence and killings. In German and Soviet Russia, the totalitarian regimes used similar methods in order to accomplish their aims. As you have already heard from my colleague, Stalin, in order to subjugate the disobedient peasantry in Ukraine, the European part of Russia, employed an artificial famine in 1932-1933 that killed about 6 million people. The Great Clearance killed about 700,000 Soviet Russia's people lives and about 200,000 Polish people's lives, quite in a short period of time. Hitler liked the effect of Stalin's actions by punishing Ukrainians with famine and applied it to Soviet war captives and Leningrad, where more than 4 million people died. By the end of the Second World War, over 10 million European people were killed by Germans, and that included about 6 million Jews. Alongside with direct extermination of people, Bolsheviks also used deportation of people to the scarcely inhabited Siberian lands. That lasted until Stalin's death, and as a result, 7.8 million women, men, and children were condemned to slow death due to starvation, cold, and diseases. These dreadful numbers are linked to deaths of Soviet residents, and that happened not in the time of war. What kind of monuments, books, ritual commemorations can we use to properly respect the victims of totalitarian regimes? Will any mother ever forget the eyesight of her baby dying on her hands? Will the Jewish boy who survived from under the bleeding bodies of his father and mother will ever forget the smell of blood? We will never answer these questions because it is not possible. However, there are other questions we must answer. Do victims of totalitarian regimes care which regime has taken away their freedom, tortured and killed, and what were the reasons? The administrative structures, as well as people who were killing and torturing, are not brought to justice. The historical justice will not be considered restored. The judges of Nazis lost their right to implement justice, pedagogues to work at schools, and the Holocaust history became an integral part of all the European countries' educational programs. Systematic research has been conducted in order to investigate the consequences of psychological traumas. Almost 5 decades, the victims of social totalitarian regime were forced to keep silent about the sufferings of their own or their family members, about violation and humiliation of their human dignity. Only after the fall of the communist regime, the victims could start speaking about their experience. They were provided modest social assistance and various benefits. However, proper social and psychological rehabilitation programs haven't been developed and applied to these people in order to compensate the moral harm done to them. A few years, the Clinical and Organizational Psychology Department of the Vilnius University was conducting the project Consequences of Soviet and Nazi Repressions, which symbolizes that there is some progress in this respect. However, most victims see that the communist totalitarian regime has not been identified as the culprit of all their sufferings on the same level as the Nazi regime. We know about 40 rescuers of the Jewish people who were risking their lives, who were deported and who died in Soviet concentration camps. Shall we be applying dual standards in respect to these people without identifying the perpetrators of repressions as criminals of war? We have to acknowledge that the Communist Party, just like National Socialists, is responsible for millions of lives. The historian Timothy Schneider, in his book Bleeding Land, states that it is only if we bravely acknowledge the similarities between Nazi and Soviet systems, we will be able to understand their difference. Therefore, let us not mix the concepts of the perpetrator and the victim. Let us identify those responsible for the crimes, in spite of what ideology they base their actions on. Only then the monuments we build and the monographs we release will serve as the moral compensation for also Soviet regime victims. Thank you.
Ačiū Birutė Burauskaitė.
Thank you, Mrs. Birutė Burauskaitė.